Mr. Banerjee, on the surface, this election looks like a done deal. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is out front. Many in the opposition are hampered by legal cases. The Electoral Commission seems to be politically compromised. Modi's polling numbers are strong. Give us a sense of what Narendra Modi's appeal to the Indian electorate is built on.
Well, to begin with, I wouldn't say that it's all done and dusted. Indian elections tend to be remarkably unpredictable. Anybody who survived the 2004 election would easily know that Modi's predecessor in the BJP, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, also thought that he's going to come in for a second term. And then, lo and behold, we had a massive surprise, and the Congress then came into power, stayed in power with its allies for the next 10 years. Things change very rapidly in Indian politics. You see the Prime Minister a lot less confident. You see him going back to his old tricks. So therefore, I wouldn't say it's done and dusted. A lot of Modi's charm, charisma, appeal comes from the fact is that people really find themselves attracted to this man who seems to be in control. Whether or not he is, whether the data suggests that, it's a separate issue. This is politics. He seems to be a man who's in control. He seems to be a man who's taking India in the right direction. And that has been very carefully cultivated in the media sphere to show this image of a man who is going to take India to a newer heights, to better days, as they call in Hindi, achhe din. Basically means that good days are just around the corner. So that is the charm, which unfortunately for the opposition, no one comes even close to. So those people who are not very happy with Narendra Modi at this point of time, they're not happy maybe what has happened 10 years after his rule, find themselves at a lack of an alternative. Therefore, they say that even if we are not very happy, he's the only guy around to vote for.
Among the people unhappy with Modi's rule is the country's largest minority, its Muslim population. Over the years, Modi has left some of the ugly talk to his proxies on that. But recently, in this campaign, he's been a little bit more vocal, and some of the things he's come out with, like this next bit, sound a little bit dangerous.
पहले हमने लव जिहाद सुना था, फिर हमने लैंड जिहाद सुना था, अब वोट जिहाद.
So how do you explain this change of tack by Modi, the fact he's a little more direct these days?
That is the question. If there was one question to be asked, regardless of who wins, who loses this election, the one question to ask is, what really happened? Remember, as you pointed out, Narendra Modi himself doesn't do the dog whistling. He has enough and more people to do the dog whistling. Some brazen calls to violence, some hints of genocide being dropped here and there. Very subtle, indirect messaging has been going on all this while. And suddenly, after the first phase of election, you see this man come back into his old role.
कांग्रेस के नेता कहते हैं कि देश की संपत्ति पर पहला हक माइनॉरिटी का मतलब मुसलमान का है.
Two reasons why this is happening. One, somewhere down the line, the BJP has understood that the campaign of progress, that India is on the right track, India has developed, people have more money, is not really going to work. And Modi is a very good learner. They have realized that this sort of campaign, this sort of lies will not work, is ultimately farmers are suffering, people are suffering, employment is a major issue, inflation is a major issue, and therefore harking back to the fear psychosis of the people, majority versus minority, 80% versus 20%, these 20% are going to expand, they're going to take away your space, your political space, they'll become the prime minister, etc., etc. The sad truth here is that this tactic has never failed Narendra Modi. To hark into the fear of people, to tap into the fear psychosis of the people, to play the Hindu-Muslim game, it has always yielded him good electoral results. So what he's doing fully aware of what he's doing, and it may just work also for him.
We cannot discuss politics in India without talking about the mainstream media. You used to work in that sphere. You've since gone independent. Talk to us about how media in India has been transformed in the period of Narendra Modi's rule.
When I joined television media in 2004, 2005, when there was a plethora of new television channels that were coming in. Television was on a high. It was the aspirational job to be in. Print was really going out of fashion, and people were tuning into television sets to watch the news. By 2012, I left television is because television was already stagnating. And I thank my stars that I quit in 2012, because what has happened after 2014 is that the gradual takeover of mainstream media has happened by the BJP. And there is a terminology also that is used for the mainstream media in India, which is called Godi media. Is basically a media that sits in the lap of those in power. And what has happened is that that media has really allowed Narendra Modi to take on a force which is much larger than him. Um, you can imagine him as a senior of a family where his decision should not be criticized. His decision should be followed. So if he says that from tonight, I'm shutting down 500 rupee and 1000 rupee currency notes, I'm going to shut it down, then the people say that's a brilliant idea. Let's go for demonetization. When he says that I'm going to have a nationwide lockdown of 1.3 billion people from 12 o'clock at midnight within a few hours for a nation of our size, people say that's a brilliant idea. So no idea that he can come up with can be a bad idea.
The Prime Minister has complete and remarkable clarity on issues, from the Ram Mandir to the caste issue, to the Muslim quota, to India's geostrategic positioning.
And all of this has been made possible by the posturing of Narendra Modi as this father figure who's looking after the nation, who's taking the nation to the next level, who should not be open to questioning. Rather, what the media has done is, instead of questioning the government, they have questioned the opposition. They have questioned Jawaharlal Nehru, a man who's long gone dead, the first Prime Minister of India, and he is still held responsible for a lot of ills that are happening in the country. So the media really has allowed for the dumbing down of the political discourse and questioning of the opposition rather than the questioning of the government in power.
Well, you fled the mainstream media space. You've succeeded. You now have one of the country's most popular YouTube channels. And usually when people do that, it's because they want to get away from the pressure, the political pressures, and the ideology. But as a YouTuber, does that pressure still land on you in some ways? Walk us through that world.
So there are two levels of pressure, I think. The easier level of pressure is the direct level of pressure. So, for example, trolling in India is an art. Trolling in India is an industry where you have people literally sitting on rows and rows of computer and doing work for a political party. And of course, the BJP cannot be defeated in that sense. They really have the largest online social presence, and saying anything against the establishment will really result in voluminous and really toxic abuse. But that is the little problem for people like us, because we've been hardened by years of journalism. It doesn't really matter. We take that as engagement. Then comes the soft pressure in terms of people reaching out to you, telling you subtly, what are you doing? Why are you just asking questions to the government? Why don't you ask questions to the opposition? And subtle hints would be dropped your way, is that do watch out, you may have trouble coming your way. So that's a fear that one lives in. I mean, somebody asks me, what's your business plan? And I jokingly tell them it's to stay out of prison. That's the plan. The worst of the pressure, indirect pressure that's going to come in very soon, are the kind of regulations that are being brought into effect. Already we have the new IT regulations, which basically can allow the government to pull down any YouTube channel, Twitter handle, based on national security interest. They can just pull down anyone's YouTube channel, anyone's Twitter handle with just one phone call. It's that easy at this point of time. On top of that, you have a new broadcast bill, which will basically give the government a lot more powers over even YouTube channels. If the government or any of the citizens are not happy with any report that we do, they can write to us and we are duty bound to answer within 24 hours. So technically, they can bury us in paperwork with 500 complaints on a day. So there are a lot of ways. It's not really putting a gun on your head. It's a little bit more sophisticated. It's using the law against the people who are trying to maintain the constitution, trying to speak out for laws and values, and using that very same law against them.
So if I understand you correctly, you see trolling as a form of engagement and your business plan is to stay out of prison. So that's relatively low bar. But earlier this year, the Indian government handed out awards and celebrated online creators. Modi personally gave some of those out to online influencers who he favors, a few of whom are your competitors, so to speak. Did you get an invite to that event? And if not, why not?
Thank God we didn't get an invite. Otherwise, it would have been very embarrassing to turn it down very openly. But I don't think that we would have been even considered for an invite. The government is playing the social media game very, very well. Remember, this is the government that came into power in 2014. And they were the masters of using Twitter. Then in 2019, they were the masters of using WhatsApp. In 2024, very interestingly, what has happened is for the first time, they are facing a blowback on social media. So to answer your question, the government is now cultivating independent social media content creators. You can control a news organization financially, but you can't control every social media creator financially because the finances are different. You don't need that kind of money to run a YouTube channel. So therefore, they are co-opting those YouTube channels they think that are friendly, that are not aggressive, that are not asking too many questions. They could be travel vloggers, they could be news educators, and those the government thinks can be co-opted. The government is giving away awards, and for most of YouTubers, proximity to power, recognition, these are highs, right? And they're falling in for the bait, absolutely. But thank God we weren't invited. We are not in for the awards. The awards that we have is the kind of people who subscribe to us, the kind of people who keep us alive. And that's the biggest award for us.
When we discuss politics in India, we do tend to let audiences off the hook. We don't really hold audiences accountable for the material that they seem so ready and eager to consume. And what has the success of Modi and the BJP revealed about how gullible or perhaps ideologically right-wing Indian news audiences really are? Do you buy that?
That's one of the saddest parts, actually. I come from a generation of television that was degenerating, and I always had seen the silent spectator, the viewer, who earlier used to say, oh, what is going on Indian television? Oh, this noise, this hate that is going on in Indian television. Had I had an opportunity of watching something else, I would have. It's only after doing independent journalism, doing a YouTube channel after so many years, one gets to understand is those were just excuses. Nobody wants to watch sensible news. Nobody wants to watch just the facts. There is a reason why the mainstream media is the way it is. And it is not only because of government pressure, because then the mainstream media would have collapsed a long time ago. It would have lost all its viewership long time ago. The fact is that while the government is pressurizing mainstream media, owning mainstream media, people also love watching this kind of vile, bigoted content. Otherwise, these channels would have gone out of business. There are YouTube channels, there are websites that are doing good business. But are they getting the kind of viewership that they could have if people stopped watching this sort of poison? No. People are still watching that poison. If you ask me, are YouTubers making an impact on Indian elections or the Indian narrative? I'm sorry. I will be the first one to say no. Because the kind of poison that is going on in mainstream media is a lot more, and it is being consumed. So people would like to believe that, no, this is what is being served. They are innocent. No. What the mainstream media, what the government has been able to do is to tap into that deep-rooted bigotry that people have within them, exploit it, enable it, and embolden people to go ahead and then speak out what was inside them, their hearts. So the fear psychosis is being played full on, and this election will show us just how much fear you can inject into people.
Akash Banerjee, thank you so much for taking the time and walking us through the politics and the coverage of the Indian election. Thank you for speaking to us today here at the Listening Post.
Thanks for having me over.
Okay, all the best. Thanks for watching. Now hit that like button and leave us a comment to let us know what you think about anything that we covered this week. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter. Does anyone really call it X? Facebook and Instagram for updates from the show. Links are in the description.